So in the 8 o'clock newscast this morning, I didn't hear it in the 9 o'clock, but in the 8 o'clock newscast from Fox today, there was that's Fox Radio News. There was a comment that President Obama hiked a glacier yesterday in Alaska. I've always been told that glaciers are not stable, and that even though you may look at them from a distance and it looks like one great big solid block of ice, that's not the case. So if the president had been swallowed by the glacier, what would the Secret Service have done? Smashed it to bits so that they could get him out. I'm a little concerned about that. Also, it's reminiscent. Uh, the president, well, I guess he's the dictator of North Korea, a few months ago was photographed speaking to an army unit at the top of a mountain, the tallest mountain in North Korea. By the way, which they haven't renamed. It's the same name that mountain has had really since the communists took over, and who knows, probably before that, some 65 years ago. But so President Kim, he's up there talking to the troops, and it was said that he hiked up the mountain on his own. And he's wearing his black, what do you call that communist uniform they always have, which is black pants, black shoes, and then there's like a black tunic, and then he was wearing his black overcoat. So he apparently hiked up there in his dress shoes, and he went up to the top of the mountain, and he talked to the troops, except there were no pictures of him. And when you actually see him, you can probably understand why. There were no pictures of him actually hiking this mountain. So he may not quite be the Superman that his government tries to portray him as. But President Obama did his own version of this yesterday, hiking the glaciers in Alaska, because he'd like to remind the American people that their bad behavior is causing the destruction of these glaciers in Alaska. And that because of that, there's going to be an environmental catastrophe, albeit a glacier covers up the land, and there's not much you can do with the land because of that. But here's Mr. Obama. He is talking yesterday as well. He's upset because there are only apparently 2 working icebreakers in Alaska. And so there's apparently an icebreaker gap with one of our main military rivals.
Contrast, Russia has about 40 and 11 icebreakers either planned or under construction.
Oh, okay. So the Russians now are leading us in icebreaker technology, and we have to get back off the schneid because if they get so far ahead of us in icebreakers, we may lose the revived Cold War. And then he went on to well, is he the president of the United States, or is he just the local ward boss for Alaska?
In part because we haven't been reinvesting. Although we technically have 3, operationally we really only have 2, and only 1 heavy icebreaker.
So why is it you actually need more icebreakers if his job or his goal is to preserve the ice? Now he wants more icebreakers. Sorry, I'm not following the man. Also, Washington Examiner has a great piece today by a writer named Lee Thompson. Headline, Glacier Bay is a complex system of fjords in southeast Alaska. And by the way, that's not an automobile. A fjord is, that has experienced rapid Arctic melt over the last 250 years. And he has this to say about Mr. Obama's trip. On what evidence does the president blame human-induced CO2 rather than natural variations in climate for causing the retreat of the glaciated areas around the Glacier Bay? Glacier Bay is a complex system of fjords in southeast Alaska that has experienced rapid Arctic melt over the last 250 years. According to the United States Geological Survey, Glacial Bay was entirely glaciated prior to the 1700s as a direct result of a little ice age. By 1750, the age ended and the glacier began its retreat. In 1794, more than 200 years after Sir Francis Drake apparently looked at the area, Captain Vancouver, who until recently was considered the first explorer to reach Glacier Bay, found that the strait that lies directly south of the bay was entirely choked with ice. Shocked by reports of the radical glacial melt occurring less than a century after Vancouver's expedition, Sierra Club founder John Muir set out for Glacier Bay, now this is before 1900, to see the region and melt himself. Once there, Muir found the massive glacier had retreated more than 48 miles up the bay. Just 35 years after Muir's expedition, the glacier's face had retreated another 17 miles. Now, all of this is taking place before the Industrial Revolution really kicked into high gear. So you're getting my drift here. It does not appear that there was man-made global warming that was actually taking place to melt these glaciers. The glaciers were already melting because of changes in climate that apparently were natural. And the writer says the largest recorded increases in atmospheric carbon dioxide occurred in the early 1900s when the Industrial Revolution really caught fire in Europe and America, and 150 years after the glacier began its retreat. Hello? 12 minutes after 9 o'clock. Bill Colley with you. This is Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. We have a caller joining us. You're on the air on Top Story.
What part of 200 years is rapid? I mean, you put an ice cube on the counter and it melts in 50 minutes. That's rapid. And here he is contradicting himself. One minute he's saying that we're causing all this ice to melt. The next minute he wants 11 more icebreakers. So now he's saying that the ice isn't going anywhere. Which is it, Mr. President? Is it going away or not?
I would think the people of Alaska... Well, I thank you for the call anyway. I would think the people of Alaska would actually like to see a little bit more glaciers or glacial retreat, simply because it's going to give you more arable land. And if you're in Alaska, you don't have a lot of options when it comes to producing various things, and this could actually be good in the long run for the Alaskan economy. A writer at the Daily Signal, Katie Tubbs, says so far less than one-third of countries have submitted plans to cut carbon dioxide emissions. That's by the Wall Street Journal's count. This is because Mr. Obama's dog and pony show in Alaska this last week was to encourage other countries to do the same. So he's telling a lot of these countries which are trying to develop their economies to actually give up developing their economies. So they come to the meeting and they go, oh, yeah, sure thing, Mr. President. Yeah. Say, I've got a flight to catch. There are at least, she writes, two major problems with this focus on global warming that he has presented. Many of the environmental trends that he has warned of do not appear to fit current realities. And then she has a little bit of background from a professor. I mean, somebody who's obviously very smart. Well, okay, she does work on a college campus. Maybe we should make that assumption. Judith Curry, a professor at Georgia Institute for Technology and participant in the International Panel on Climate Change and National Academy of Sciences, writes that when politicians talk about an undeniable climate consensus, they are brushing over, quote, very substantial disagreement about climate change, unquote. And she has a number of things, scientific, discussion here, like insufficient observational evidence, disagreement about the value of different classes of evidence, disagreement about the appropriate logical framework, assessments of areas of ambiguity and ignorance, brief polarization as a result of politicization of the science, and says all of this leaves multiple ways to interpret and reason about the available evidence. So, the writer at Daily Signal says Obama hasn't given Americans or the world an answer to perhaps the most important question: what kind of impact will global warming measures accomplish? Aha! So he's talking about what we need to do, but he's not saying what's going to happen once we do it. There was a fellow by the name of Bjorn Lomborg. I believe he's Danish or Swedish, and he has written extensively about these issues. The first time I ever read Lomborg, I had picked up a copy of a Washington newspaper, and I was waiting for church. So I was really early. I was sitting in the parking lot a good hour before the service started, Sunday paper, and I started reading this column by Lomborg, and he was explaining they have all of these brilliant ideas, but most of them are that the money that will be spent will actually have very little impact on the overall, on humanity, which is why we're doing this, right? Oh, they may say they're doing it to save little, guppies or something in a bay somewhere, but we're really doing this because they say we need to do it to save humanity from a catastrophe. He said, you've got to realize it's happening. It's going to happen. So you can spend far less when it comes to money, that is the treasure of the various countries involved, if you just try and work around the changes that are going to take place, because you're not going to stop them. The writer here says, for starters, federal subsidies and tax credits for wind and solar have cost billions of dollars while only increasing wind and solar contribution to the American energy mosaic by 5%. In addition, it has tied both industries to government dependence with only minor success. Well, again, there's talk about what's going to happen when you go try to buy your electricity in the coming years because of what they're doing. Now think about this. Stock market dropped nearly 500 points yesterday. It's been on a roller coaster. Canada is in recession. If Canada is in recession, we're probably not far behind. There is a story today that I happened to see in a publication that says the Chinese trying to prop up their stock market are simply going to run out of their available currency by the end of the year. And then China will squander all of its savings in doing that. And if the Chinese economy goes down, it is a rather large one, and it is somehow symbiotic and tied to ours. So we're going to have all of these issues. Who is going to be able to pay for the doubling and tripling or quadrupling of their electricity costs at home? That's a simple question to ask. That's what Mr. Obama is looking to do to you. I'll provide you with food stamps and heating assistance. No, you've got a country that is officially $18 trillion in debt, perhaps $100 trillion when you count up all of the unfunded liabilities. How can you possibly make a promise like this? How can you sit there and tell people that, you know what, we'll eliminate your jobs and we'll make sure that the cost of your energy that you use at home goes soaring, but don't worry, we'll give you food stamps and we'll give you heating assistance, and you know what, we'll buy your clothes. You cannot possibly do this when you are so far in debt. And besides, if the economy crumbles, the government won't be bringing in any revenue to balance that. Not that they balance it already. And if China goes under, China essentially has been underwriting our debt for how long? The Chinese may call our note. So all of these promises liberals make, that there's going to be a perpetual free lunch, just trust them, they can't carry it out. They can't carry through. And why there are people out there who still believe it. That's why they want to bring in these newcomers from over in the Middle East and from south of the border, is because those people generally believe it. Sure, okay, whatever you say. I'll tell you what, when we can no longer give them the free lunch, they're going to be out in the streets rioting too. And they don't have any specific long-term loyalties to the United States. They didn't grow up and take a civics class. They don't know what makes this country special because they don't have that cultural attachment. I'm just telling you, this is a perfect storm. We had a caller jump all over me for predicting there will be blood in the streets in this country. It's not like I'm saying, we need blood in the streets. I am surely not. But the moron can't seem to understand. Well, of course, he struggles with English, so maybe that's why. But you look at all of these factors, and if we tie them all together, it's going to come to pass. Now, that's a prediction. It's a warning. How do we stop it? Well, get rid of the current ruling political class. Maybe there's a good place to start. 20 minutes after 9 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on Top Story. Oh, John McCain has a piece. I know he's pretty useless, too. He has a piece today at the Wall Street Journal. But he says we're missing the real Arctic threat. The Soviets aren't worried about the loss of glaciers. Well, the Russians, but they're kind of like the Soviet Union again with their behavior. They're militarizing the area. What are we doing? Oh, we're behind them on icebreakers, and I want the Congress to fund more icebreakers. Because if we don't, we'll lose to the Russians. 20 minutes after 9 o'clock, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com.